Manufacturing in 2030. What does the future hold? We can't know for certain, but we can shape it. The decisions manufacturers make, the technologies we deploy, the vision we embark on, will define us in the next decade and beyond. Competition's intensifying. Disruption is abounding. Will we just accept a comfortable status quo? Or will we unleash a new engine of production to transform the world? We're manufacturers. The future doesn't shape us. We shape the future. Let's get to work.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're located, and welcome and thank you for joining today's MLC Masterclass as a part of our Manufacturing in 2030 project, Getting Strategic with AI. Before we begin, we have just a few housekeeping items. We've muted all participant lines today to maintain sound quality throughout the session. However, we do encourage asking questions, and you'll just do that by placing them in the questions box, which is located at the right-hand side of your screen. We will do our best to address all of your questions either during the session or during the Q&A portion of the event. And lastly, this session is being recorded and will be sent via email within 24 hours of the session's conclusion, as well as available on the Manufacturing Leadership Council website within 5 to 7 business days. And now to today's moderator, MLC's Content Director, Jeff Puma. Jeff, I turn it over to you.
Hi there, everyone. To set the stage here, in the spring of 2021, the Manufacturing Leadership Council, which is a division of the National Association of Manufacturers, launched its Manufacturing in 2030 project. The project's main goal is to enable manufacturers to envision what manufacturing might look like by the year 2030. Realizing this goal entails thinking broadly about the context in which manufacturing will operate in the decade ahead, including the population, demographics, and economic trends that will shape the industry. In addition, it includes understanding the direction and velocity of technological trends associated with Manufacturing 4.0, the industry's transition to digital manufacturing model. Perhaps most importantly, it requires identifying and understanding the challenges that we'll all face as an industry as we move to the next stage of Manufacturing 4.0. Armed with these understandings, manufacturers can better plan their long-term future and find ways to enhance their value, competitiveness, and contribution to society. Now, in June, MLC published our latest Manufacturing in 2030 project survey report called The Future of Industrial AI in Manufacturing. The timing of this report and research could not be better with the excitement around generative AI tools like ChatGPT, Bard, and others. Truth be told, the MLC and our Manufacturing in 2030 partners have been talking about AI for a while now, and we even focused a spotlight on AI as the sole topic of conversation at our 2-day in-person event in Nashville last year. But the Future of Industrial AI in Manufacturing survey report that we just published unveils new truths about manufacturing's direction and how AI and machine learning will propel industry forward by 2030. I hope everyone who's on the call today has downloaded the report from our website and taken the time to review the data and the analysis. In our executive summary, we wrote about how factories have changed over the past decade and concluded that few of the new technologies in place today have, quote, held such pervasive promise as AI and machine learning in their potential to transform the future of industry as it approaches 2030. So in other words, the survey data tells us that AI and ML have transformative power to slingshot manufacturing ahead by the time we reach the end of this decade. But the survey data also tells us that only 29% have elevated AI initiatives into formal plans or strategies at this time. With that in mind, we're going to dive into the data and analysis with our panel during the balance of our time today. But first, as you see on the screen, I want to acknowledge our partners, EY, Infor, NTT Data, and West Monroe. And now, from those esteemed partners, I want to introduce our expert panelists for the session and dive into the content. So, Sangeetha Jayabalan from NTT Data. She is the Managing Director, Manufacturing Advisory and Digital Consulting. David McGraw, Senior Manager, Consumer and Industrial Products and member of the Center of Excellence for AI at West Monroe. Roscoe Newsom, Principal, Advanced Manufacturing Mobility at EY, and Chirag Rathi, Senior Director, Industry and Solution Strategy at Infor. So welcome, ladies and gentlemen, or lady and gentlemen. It's good to have you all here.
Thank you.
Let's jump right into some questions here and thinking about the data. Let's start with where we're at today as an industry and how we need to progress in order to get where we want to be. 39% of survey respondents say they're experimenting with small-scale pilot projects in their plants and factory operations, while only 7% say they're implementing AI at scale in multiple factories. That 7% matches the number of respondents who said they've made no progress with AI in manufacturing operations. So there's been some progress, but widespread adoption is rare for an enterprise, according to the data. Meanwhile, as you'll see on the next chart here, 96% of survey respondents expect to see an increase in overall AI investments in their operations by 2030, with half of that group expecting a 25 to 100% plus increase. So the questions, I guess, are, isn't it increased investment enough? What else has to happen between now and 2030 for those investments to lead to successful implementations at scale? David, let's start with you from the West Monroe perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. There's probably a lot that needs to get done. The first and foremost is getting access to the data and the data that matters. I wouldn't be surprised if we peeled this back and see that some of the folks that may have answered this differently than what we would have expected, they might not have access to all the data. But I think most importantly, it comes down to impact. So if AI and ML, if folks that are making the investments, that are doing pilots with AI and ML, if they're not seeing some type of financial impact, that's going to cause some concern. It's going to potentially derail some of the pilots and keep them from getting to production. So I think there's a couple things that need to happen between now and 2030 to see more adoption of AI and ML. So one, as folks are building out the strategy and their roadmap on how they're going to deploy AI and ML, which use cases they're going to go after, first and foremost, they truly have to understand what are the financial levers that they're actually pulling. How do they plan to measure that? Because the measurement of that, right, is really a key piece. And, you know, when I was at Rethink, it was something I had heard multiple times from many different people saying, I haven't seen the impact. So understanding what the levers are, how you're going to measure it, I think that's going to go a long way into telling the story to leadership, right? And getting that story told will obviously help fund future projects and movement into production. But I think the other piece that is often missed, and I've mentioned this on a few other broadcasts that we've done, is it comes down to how do you operationalize those insights? So AI, like building the models, getting them somewhat accurate or accurate enough, like that's challenging. But what's even more challenging is getting people to take those insights and use them in their everyday workflow. So there's got to be a strategy around that just the same. So to me, those are some of the biggest things that just need to be considered, right? So just key takeaways there would be, what are the right use cases? How are you going to measure what the impact is? How are you going to operationalize those insights?
Excellent. Sangeetha, anything that you'd like to add on?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. And in addition to what David just said, he touched upon all the valid points, actually. My point towards the adoption rate, the pace in which the adoption of AI is happening, I think the biggest challenge is understanding how to layer these new technologies, the AI technologies, into existing manufacturing operation. Because if we are building something from ground up, it's easier. But it is fitting the right fitment of AI within the existing operation. So companies, when they invest heavily in people, equipment, and technology towards their automation journey, I think it is not only important to determine which process to automate, but also to figure out which operational practices has to be revised to make those implementations successful. I think that's where there has to be a balance, because it's not a siloed approach of having AI. It has to be people, equipment, and technology together.
Excellent. So, Roscoe, I want to kind of shift into a little bit of strategy or organizational makeup to support AI, and ask you a question about that realm. So 19% of survey respondents attach a high level of importance to technology today, and that number rises to only 27% when we asked about the future importance of it by 2030. At the same time, 51% report that their company's AI initiatives are not part of their overall digital transformation strategy. These numbers seem to undervalue AI's potential. The alternative explanation is that AI is being overhyped. So first off, for everybody on this panel, does anybody think that AI is overhyped?
No.
Yeah, I'm seeing some heads shaking no. So yeah, so assuming that it's not overhyped, why does this disconnect exist between the clear potential of this technology and companies' inclusion of AI in their digital transformation plans? Roscoe, from your perspective, from EY's perspective, what do you have to say about that?
No, Jeff, really appreciate it, and great question. And we kind of face this one every day as we talk to our clients as they look to like update their DX plan and whatnot. And I think it comes down to pretty much two things. Like companies are still playing catch up, and they're overwhelmed. And when I say playing catch up, right, we're still learning how to walk. So if you think of like industry 1.0 to 4.0, crawl, walk, run, and then fly, we just finished crawling. If you look at, aerospace and defense, most diversified manufacturers, they're in industry 1.5, still learning how to really crawl and then potentially start to run. And so I think that, has a lot to do with kind of where things are at. And if you look, 12 years ago, we were just talking about big data. Now we're talking about insights and intelligence. And so people are still working on those fundamental building blocks. And when I say overwhelmed, I mean, they're still digesting all of that information from before. So as we talk to even the big players, but especially when you go to the small and medium manufacturers or SMMs, they're just like overwhelmed. If you think about, I kind of, call it like a buzzword bonanza of there's machine learning, artificial intelligence, deep learning, NLP, OCR. There's a billion different things coming at them at once, and they're trying to figure out which ones are going to stick and actually, move the needle in terms of the business. And so I think, like I said, people are just overwhelmed and still digesting a lot of that information. And based off of all the stuff that's happened over the last, few years and whatnot, there's a lot of transformation fatigue, right? So they're still trying to work through all of that and licking the wounds on that one. So they don't want to hear a lot more about, well, now there's this new shiny new object of Gen AI and artificial intelligence. How do we incorporate that? I think one of the biggest roadblocks is like being just risk averse, right? We're just to see how this is going to evolve and how they can incorporate it. And then another big one is the capital requirements, right? That's going to take to implement and get this technology to kind of to create its full impact on the business. So I think, like I said, playing catch up and being overwhelmed.
Anything that any of our other panelists would add to that on the strategy front? Okay. Well, let's move on a little bit here to our next chart. So carrying on from that disconnect between AI's inclusion in DX strategy and its potential, the survey asked about 14 areas related to overall business performance where AI might provide a benefit, plus 8 production operations areas and 9 supply chain areas. In every single instance, at least 70% of respondents said AI would have a high or moderate benefit. So focusing on that production operations element here, improved predictive maintenance, sustainable production operation, production process innovation, and increased uptime of factory assets. Those made up the top 4 areas where the most respondents see high potential benefit. Does that align with what you're seeing in factories, Chirag? Do those benefit areas vary based on the company's AI maturity?
Absolutely, Jeff. So thank you, first of all, for the invite to this webinar. Great to be associated with the Manufacturing 2030 project. It's certainly our window in terms of the future of manufacturing. So great to be part of the panel discussion today. So yeah, it aligns in some ways with our worldview as well. And if you start looking at the number of applications, sheer number of applications and use cases that have come up for manufacturing, and you start clustering them around some of the business use cases, then certainly you'll start seeing 2 major clusters emerge. So production process improvement, definitely, and the AI applications associated with that is a key cluster, and close second is the supply chain one. So certainly a lot of applications and use cases aligned to these 2 specific business use cases around manufacturing. On the production side, our view has been that a lot of applications are specifically aimed at creating decision support. So decision support, whether it comes to process optimization, whether it comes to line balancing, even to the extent of looking at product design and development, companies are looking at AI ML basically to guide them, in terms of what are the best decisions that they can take when it comes to these, to balance these kind of parameters and stuff like that. But if you increase the purview, if you like, or expand the purview of production processes, you start looking into maintenance management. Predictive maintenance is by itself a huge cluster of its own. And then you extend it into quality, which is another key area, whether it's predictive quality or inline inspection of quality. AI is playing a major role here. And then last one is energy management, which I don't see it being part of this particular survey, but certainly we are seeing a lot of interest as far as energy management is concerned and use of AI ML in association with production processes. And then if you start looking at the next cluster, which is supply chain, a lot of what we are looking into the supply chain side is basically customers very interested in creating supply chain towers, using AI ML basically to create these supply chain towers that they give them end-to-end visibility in terms of what's happening on the supply chain side. So certainly this cluster has peaked interest during the COVID years, and it continues to garner more and more interest because the disruptions are still in play. But certainly these 2 areas have been quite crucial when it comes to focus of AI ML development and use cases for the manufacturing industry. Lastly, to the question of benefits, I think the benefits in some ways are aligned with the scales of project. So the bigger the project you do when it comes to AI ML, the success or the benefits, if you like, are likely to be commensurate to that. And that goes back to the maturity of the company as well. So the more mature the company is when it comes to AI ML, the more likely they are able to achieve huge scale when it comes to these applications and these use cases. And as I said, that it is commensurate, and in some ways there is an almost linear relationship between the 2.
Excellent, thank you. Roscoe, back to you on this one. Do you have anything that you wanted to add? I think I saw you.
Happy to chime in on this one. So I think the 4 areas I mentioned, I think, yes, they're all benefit from AI maturity. I think the one that kind of stands out the most to me, well, I think production and process innovation is one is that higher fruit. I think the other ones are lower hanging fruits that you just kind of get. That's a normal blocking and tackling. But that production process and innovation is one that's very key. I think right now, kind of the way we predicted kind of over EY is saying we're going to leverage kind of AI to kind of maximize the brownfield, or basically that current footprint and layout of an existing manufacturing infrastructure, right? Because we don't have the time to knock down and rebuild a lot of things going on. But I think as you gain more insights from AI and it becomes, more mature within these processes, that's when you'll start to see people start to think about, do we need to create a new greenfield? Do we need to rethink how we manufacture? And that's when you'll start seeing some of those clean sheet designs. So I think Chirag was definitely on key with everything he said. But taking a little further, I think it's like that maximizing the brownfield, and then, like I said, eventually moving on to that greenfield of how we manufacture things.
Excellent. Okay, before we move on, I just want to remind our audience to put some add any questions that you might have into the question box on your screen, and we'll do our best to get to those at the end. And if we don't have time to get to all of our questions that come in, we've had a couple come in already and some came in during the registration process. We'll do our best to either answer them after the fact, or they may help shape our programming and the content that we provide going forward as well. So, so definitely please put your questions in and we'll get to as many of those as we can today. So moving on with the survey data and the analysis, we asked respondents about how they're measuring AI's effectiveness and impact. A shocking number, at least to me, 61%, said that they have no metrics in place. Why is it important, even in these earliest days of AI's deployment, to measure its effectiveness? What advice do you have for our audience about how to start measuring and what to look for in an AI effectiveness metric? David, let's go with you. I've heard you mention some of this in our previous discussions, and you always have some great things to share, so I'm hoping the same is true today.
Thanks, Jeff. The easy answer is, why is it important? I think we all know the answer is you can't manage what you don't measure. But at the end of the day, right, when you think of metrics, there's multiple types of metrics that you could be looking at as it relates to ML/AI. So the first metric that I would always recommend folks to have laid out is, what's the success metrics, right? These models aren't perfect. They're never going to be perfect. So what's good enough, and what's good enough to move into production? Otherwise, you will get stuck into that POC purgatory. And in my past, I've seen where there was no agreed upon success metric, but there was kind of a nod and a nod of what would be good enough. The model gets to that, and then the goalpost gets moved. And what I'd find myself is just spinning my wheels, trying to figure out, what's wrong with the model, or what can we do to improve it by 3 or 4 percentage points, so on and so forth. And at the end of the day, that's an extremely time-consuming task. It's an expensive task, and even something like predictive maintenance, a use case like predictive maintenance, is a 5% improvement in accuracy really going to make the difference, right? Because having something is better than having nothing. So I would strongly recommend, at minimum, you have some type of success metric put in place as you're doing the POC, or if you're doing it in the sandbox prior to moving it into production. So there, at least you have something agreed upon, and once that is met, you can move it into production. And as I mentioned, earlier on, it's really important to understand, first and foremost, what are you trying to impact, right? So once you understand what you are absolutely trying to impact, you can back into the types of metrics that you want to measure. And by measuring those metrics, and I mentioned it before, and I'm sorry if I sound repetitive, but it's what you're going to use to tell that story, to get more funding, right, to show or to verbalize the success of these models, that project, the program, etc. So that's primarily the advice that I give, or the recommendations. Like, these need to be done. It needs to be well thought out. I would certainly not start an ML/AI project without having thought through all of this first. And I'll leave it at that for now. Jeff?
Great. Shrag, any advice that you have for our audience on how to start measuring and what to look for?
Absolutely, Jeff. Yeah. So I agree with what David said, right? You need to define those success criteria right at the onset. Otherwise, there's no way to measure and improve, if you like, of what you're doing with the AI. One best practice that we've seen, specifically in the industrial manufacturing customers that we deal with, is to define the KPIs which are relatable to business, right? So AI has its own sort of set of gamut, if you like, of statistical effectiveness measurement KPIs, R-square analysis, and a whole bunch of other statistical metrics that you could use to check the effectiveness of the prediction that AI/ML is providing. But we always advise customer to root it in terms of the business outcome and make sure that those KPIs are relatable. Once you find the relevant criteria or KPIs, you need to make sure that they are observable, measurable, and they are consistently available, right, for you guys to be able to use them consistently when it comes to defining what success looks like for AI/ML. So in cases of predictive maintenance, for instance, the focus should be mean time to repair and mean time between failure, as opposed to focusing on the R-square analysis and how accurate the prediction of the AI/ML model has been. So once you have those business metrics defined, the KPIs defined and rooted in the business problem that you're trying to solve, you find greater adoption, and basically everybody feels successful when the AI/ML algorithm, if you like, delivers a correct, a prediction about the, about the state, if you like, of an equipment, for instance. So I think those would be our best, my recommendations in terms of the kind of best practices that you need to have in place when it comes to defining what success looks like and KPIs look like for this one. So, but yeah, this data is certainly shocking that 61% have no objective criteria of measuring the success, if you like, of defining the success of AI/ML. Hopefully that changes as companies become more mature when it comes to AI/ML adoption.
Excellent. Excellent. Sanjitha, I want to ask you about the challenges that manufacturers are facing with regard to AI adoption, but I want to kind of set the stage with another chart here, which is our chart 13. 65% of those surveyed said data issues, including access, format, integration, privacy, and governance, are the biggest challenge to adoption. So as we dive deeper into the challenge that data represents, 56% of respondents say data contextualization, or basically the ability to make data actionable, is the most challenging data hurdle that they face right now. When I saw that data point, my initial reaction was that AI technologies themselves could be both the cause and solution to this issue. Can AI help solve the contextualization issue, or are there other options to help manufacturers drive actions from their data? Sanjitha, what are your thoughts?
Sure. It is today, as of now, it is not the cause, but it can be the solution, the AI. But before jumping there, what we are seeing with our clients is the lack of universal industrial data that is slowing the adoption of AI within the mainstream manufacturing companies. Usually the manufacturing data is often localized or specific to particular industry domain or company's operation. So there isn't a lot of relevant data available for building AI models when we compare to the kind of data that we get in banking or retail. And that's how the transferable AI models could be built for one client, could be used for others with some adoption. Here, there is no universal industrial data. How, of course, we can use AI to solve this problem. Two ways, two approach. First one is generative AI. So using generative AI, such as ChatGPT, it will be more intuitive way to model complex data set and images that could open up AI to broader manufacturing use case and user type. Coming to the data part of it, we can use data-centric AI and synthetic data. This will shift the focus away from building complex algorithmic models to focusing on building optimal data set to train on AI. This will put AI within the reach of plant workers and manufacturing engineers who understand everyday production requirement and process challenges, but aren't necessarily versed in data modeling. For example, a factory maintenance worker who knows everything, every challenge or every production mechanics in the shop floor. He or she may not particularly be digitally savvy, but if we use a ChatGPT as a interface, it would be completely different. And the information, the maintenance worker could take the information instead of figuring out from the charts or metrics from the AI model. It will be easier to access and also to collect data sets that would be, again, used for building machine learning and AI models, the better ones.
That's great. Roscoe, anything that you would add to that?
Yeah, no, I think this is a great question because at the Rethink conference a couple of weeks ago, one of the best quotes I think I heard from Kimmer's company, IT personnel, he says, "I have all the data but no context." And so basically he's struggling trying to figure out how to get the insights and out of this data and this information that he has. And so to kind of answer your question, I think AI is a tool. It's a smart tool, but it's still just a tool. And you need to, basically incorporate the business functions and the people to help add that context, because they're the ones with the knowledge, as Sangeeta just said, in terms of like that person on the factory line, have that tribal knowledge of that machine, can add that context to help enrich that data to make it more useful. Otherwise, it's just ones and zeros, right? So I think that's a key part of it. And so recommendations that we kind of provide going forward is making sure you kind of work with business functions to contextualize that data, but also making sure you foster a collaborative environment where it's not siloed like IT here, OT over there, and then the functions in a distant area. It's a very collaborative exercise to create those solutions. So that's kind of what I would say from a context for that perspective.
Excellent. Shirag, anything that you'd add for how to contextualize data, whether with AI or another solution?
Absolutely, yes. So increasingly, you'll see that as the AI/ML use cases become more mature, they'll become more and more multi-threaded, right? So you will start pulling in for every AI/ML data use case that you're trying to develop, data from IT, from OT, from ET, which is engineering technology, operation technology, IT, and also from visual data sources and other edge products as well. So when you are pulling in data from so many different types of sources, to be able to contextualize that data becomes a really, really big challenge, right? And increasingly, we'll find that humans perhaps are not capable of contextualizing that data. So Sangeeta mentioned earlier that there is a use case for generative AI. It's something that we are also seeing that can basically be used as a great technology for this data ops operation, data ops, so to speak, when it comes to contextualizing the data. And as I said, that more and more complex problems that the industry starts to solve, which is pulling in from these diverse data sources, you will start using more and more generative AI. So generative AI and the development that we are seeing in the last few months or years, I think, is opportune because you'll increasingly start using that technology basically to contextualize the data.
David, anything that you would add to this? No. We got all our bases covered? Excellent. I knew we had the right panel. Everybody's covering everything very thoroughly here. So let's move on to another question. And this one, I'm going to reference a couple charts and the build up to this question here. So bear with me, everyone. There's concern that AI may displace workers, but we also live in a time when manufacturers are dealing with skills gap, unfilled jobs, and as digital technology becomes more prominent in manufacturing, the need to compete against other industries to attract these digitally savvy workers. Yet only about 1 in 5 survey respondents says that their company's workforce will decrease because of AI adoption. And that's a chart that everyone's seeing on the screen now. At the same time, 85% of respondents told us that they expect to retrain or reassign workers because of AI adoption. What's more, nearly 2/3 of respondents say there is no dedicated budget for AI training and education at their company. Creating a budget is one step manufacturers can take to prepare for this future. What else should leaders be thinking about in order to sort of chum the waters and prepare their workforce for AI adoption? David, let's start with you on this one.
Yeah, so can you go back to chart 15? So what's really interesting to me is when you look at this pie chart, 21% of the respondents said the headcount would decrease. I bet, right, and obviously this goes out to folks in the MLC, which are in leadership roles. I bet if this survey went out to people levels, 1 or 2 levels lower, this pie chart would look very different, and that percent of workforce headcount would be will decrease would be much higher. That would be my guess is that would be the perception. And I think there's this mismatch of where leadership thinks this goes versus where folks that are most likely to be impacted by AI and ML thinks it's going to go. And because of that, I think where, one of the things that absolutely needs to get done as part of that investment is change management. And it's more of a working with the folks that do think they're going to be impacted and helping them understand that's not where leadership thinks it's going to go, and help change the perception. And the reason that becomes important as far as adoption is concerned, if people that are most likely the ones that are going to use the insights in their day-to-day through AI and ML are the ones that are most scared by it or thinking they might lose their job because of it, they're going to do everything in their power, most likely not to adopt it. So if leadership truly believes the numbers that are in this pie chart, I do think it starts with a good change management program and involving those individuals very much early on when you're starting to create these, or excuse me, when you're identifying and defining what the use cases are, and ensuring that everyone's voice is heard and they're participating in the program just the same as leadership. I think that, in addition to budget, obviously training people is going to be an important piece of this. But the question then still remains, what type of training will you provide to people? There are going to be folks that need to be trained on how to develop, I guess, for lack of better words, ML and AI models. If Gen AI continues to grow, prompt large language models. But then, there's still folks in the organization that'll be impacted by AI and ML, but they won't necessarily need to be trained on it. So I do, again, right, I think there's some training that might just be required around how to use those insights. So, what's the most effective way to use these insights? And there's things that you can't train either, which is trust, right? And that just takes, going to take some time for people to use these technologies. It's going to take time for people to trust these technologies. And then I think, other things that are going to be necessary that don't require money or any type of investment, it's just leadership having these frank and open conversations about where they think AI and ML fit in and what they think the impact would be to the jobs, specifically to the folks that are thinking they're most likely to be impacted.
Sanjeet, anything from the NTT data perspective?
Yeah, we are definitely seeing a lot of workforce displacement, that's because AI is augmenting the workforce. Companies are increasingly relying on AI generated insights, which shows that there is going to be there's always be a need of human layer that systematically governs data quality and automation results. So people are not getting away. Maybe, yes, they get displaced with different skill set. And again, if you go to chart 16, where it shows the training part is very low, that's a little alarming. If you go to the next slide, yeah. Because it's not only about the training, that's on theoretical, what can AI do, or how repetitive tasks could be replaced by automation. It's more about how people understand the functionalities or how things can be done, like give them a small pilot initiative, experimented with generative AI as an interface, and that will give them the space to learn, develop skills, and secure early wins. And those early wins will, end of the day, it is all about making money, whether it is growth or cost reduction, everything. So the workforce will be able to find which process and how to implement and how to reach the goal or the bottom line objective of making operational efficiency and the operational optimization. So it is the workforce, it has to be a knowledge-based approach. The workforce has to have a complete knowledge about what they are dealing with, and also they should be given experimenting space to learn and develop.
Excellent. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the overall impact of AI in manufacturing. So according to our survey data, 59% of respondents say the impact will be significant or a game changer. That leaves 41% who said they don't know or that the impact will not be significant. Where do each of you land on this? And what will AI's impact be on manufacturing? Game changing, significant, but not transformative, or not significant at all? Chirag, let's start with you here. Chirag, did we lose you?
You're on mute.
Well, Chirag, we'll come back to you. Sanjitha, do you want to stick with you for this?
Sure. Thanks, Jeff. I'm part of the 41%, and I think it's a game changer, definitely, because already the industry has moved to a standard of having quality products more quickly and consistently. It's a critical differentiator. It's not something in future. It is already happening. To have that critical differentiator, there is nothing other than automation and AI that will help companies to have this competitive edge. And also, it's not only about the growth and competition, but also it's critical to attract the next generation of workers, right? If we can't make them excited about and interested in the manufacturing careers, in one of the charts we see there is a labor shortage. It is across the industry. So I think it's not only for the competitive edge growth, but also to retain talent. The companies have no other go but have to get on the AI wagon.
Excellent. Chirag, are you able to jump in here now? Okay.
Hi, sorry, Chirag just needs to unmute manually and you'll be able to comment. You should be good, Chirag.
I'm happy to chime in, Jeff.
Yeah, sure. We'll jump to Roscoe and we'll keep working on it. Okay.
No, I think, similar to Geeth, I think it's definitely transformative in terms of what AI brings. And I think some of the underlying reasons we just step back and look at it from kind of a macro level is looking at transformation just because of what it unlocks, right? And so if you look at it from just structured versus unstructured data, a lot of the conversation everybody's having is around structured data. So our normal tech stack, ERP, PLM, ES, HR data, et cetera, it's a lot of the structured piece. But AI, if you turn it towards the unstructured, there's a lot of value that it can bring and insights that it can grab from that. When I say unstructured data, we're talking about scanned documents, PDFs, emails, images, videos, et cetera. And, based off of kind of our internal data, we're saying like 80% of enterprise data is unstructured, right? And so a lot of the focus has been on just that structured piece. And the fact that AI just enables the access of unstructured and gaining those insights from that information is critical and transformative. And we're just scratching the surface when it comes to that particular aspect.
Jeff, yeah, I'm back.
Welcome back.
Some technical issues. So yeah, I think there are a combination, like multitude of things that we are seeing as far as manufacturing is concerned, right? There are areas where this particular AI ML application has the ability to transform the industry and the business model. Specifically, if you look at what's happening in the capital goods space, where slowly capital good manufacturers are moving from equipment sales to servitization models. In that, AI ML can be a game changer technology because that will fundamentally have them, help them transform their business model from selling equipment to selling outcomes for the customers, right? Whether it's gas turbines, whether it's pumps, compressors, any large capital equipment that you can think. If you have AI ML capabilities attached with the equipment, you're able to do predictive maintenance and you're basically able to fundamentally transform your business model from sales to servitization. In that case, yes, it's going to be transformational. But for most of the other stuff, right, when it comes to production operations, when it comes to supply chain, a lot of AI ML is basically with regards to decision support and potentially should help with incremental gains, if you like, when it comes to improvement as far as processes itself is concerned.
Jeff,
Look on mute, Jeff.
David, I think I know where you fall on this, but do you want to confirm my suspicion? Is it changing, significant, but not transformative?
Bias built into my response, right? I'm definitely part of the 59%, as you would expect. And the reason why, and although I won't get the quote exact, I'll steal it from one of my mentors. You know, with IoT data, with all the data that Roscoe mentioned across all the different IT systems, any stakeholder in an organization has real-time access to the state of the business. If you put AI and ML on top of that, you should potentially be able to predict the future of the business. What's going to happen tomorrow? What levers do you have to pull to get there? Assuming we could get that far, I mean, how couldn't you consider that game changing?
Excellent. So we've seen a lot of excitement around generative AI tools for manufacturing and other industries. So David, for example, when you and I did a Decision Compass call a few months ago, it was the largest audience we have had at MLC for a DC call. The excitement mainly centers around ChatGPT, Bard, other generative AI tools, but traditional AI tools also exist and have value. How do we harness that generative AI excitement and channel it toward adoption and use of both generative and traditional AI? You know, David, I'll stick with you on this one to start.
Yeah, Jeff. I mean, Gen AI has been a boom for just traditional AI ML, right? So oftentimes what we find ourselves at West Monroe is in conversations with clients, you know, discussing Gen AI. And as we start peeling the onion back, a lot of the issues that they're looking to solve are not, you know, could they be solved by Gen AI? Possibly. Is that the right tool to solve the problem? No, right? It all falls back to traditional AI, ML type of problems. So I think this is organically happening. I think Gen AI has really lit the fire, and you know, just look across all these, you know, all the new startups that are forming. Yes, they're very Gen AI rooted in Gen AI, but a lot of them are just rooted in what are traditional AI ML platforms and solutions. So I think this is happening organically, and you know, I'm sure anyone else that talks to this question will probably say they started to see something very similar. So it's been a huge positive. I think it's going to really help with adoption. It's at least moving the conversation forward on traditional AI ML, which has, you know, in the past, you know, I've taken 2 steps forward, 1 step back. This seems like 3 steps forward.
Shrug, anything that you would add?
Yeah, certainly. So I think so far our experience of using AI ML as far as manufacturing industry is concerned is largely focusing on a class of AI that we can broadly define as predictive AI. Right? So they are statistical models. We use machine learning tools to be able to predict what's happening in the future and basically make some changes based on the advice that the AI you know, provides. Right? So it's basically very predictive in nature. The generative AI basically is now a whole new class of AI systems that is coming into place. And generative AIs basically are fundamentally different in some ways to the predictive AIs because they are basically using more deep learning algorithms as opposed to machine learning, and they are generating basically new content based on the data sets that you train basically that particular model on, right? So they are good at certain qualitative aspects, less good as far as predictive aspects are concerned, right? So if you fundamentally want to differentiate the predictive and the generative AI, predictive AI, very good at extrapolating, generative AI, very good in interpolating. So a use case that we're seeing as far as generative AI is concerned is in product design and development. So essentially, in future, you might be able to talk to the generative AI and give them parameters, if you like, of a product that you want to manufacture. They can give them parameters in terms of what is the material construction, what the weight should be, what the dimension should look like, and other parameters, engineering parameters that you'd like to feed. And the generative AI should be able to give you, multiple blueprints, if you like, of the same particular, product that you're trying to manufacture. And then you can choose the best design that you perhaps like. Another use case for generative AI that we talked about earlier was on the data ops and data contextualization area, where generative AI can help with solving some of the contextualization issues that we will have in the future as more complex AI ML algorithms become available. So I think if you combine both the generative and the predictive AI together, we'll have a very powerful tool, if you like, of AI ML, I guess classes of, algorithms that can be deployed either collaboratively or independently to solve a lot of manufacturing related problems in the future. So a lot of excitement, still early days for generative AI, but certainly these two use cases seem very, very promising as far as generative AI.
Sangeeta, I see you nodding your head there. Is there something you were?
I'm fully aligned. He touched upon all the points. Yeah. Generative AI has become like a user interface or friendly user interface, and all the mathematical models will take data or give data through generative AI.
So, Roscoe, anything that you would like to add on to this?
Yeah, no, I think I attack it from like the people side of the house. When you talk about adoption and then you talk about, kind of in question one, we were saying scale. I think it's, looking at the individuals and the people and understanding where that is right now. And one of the things that we're getting as we talked a lot of conversation is literally just got to debunk the fear, because people have a fear. So how do you get over that particular fear? Fear of being replaced, fear of not understanding the technology. And I think a lot of that is just changing the narrative of specifically Gen AI. You look at ChatGPT, first thing you were talking about, a lot of the stories were exciting, but they were talking about how people are cheating and using it for different bad uses. Start showcasing those positive use cases, showcasing how it's front and center right now with the writer's guild, right? That's because there's initial fear about what it can happen and what it could bring you, how it, changes the whole entertainment business. So I think, focusing on the capabilities rather than technology is a key aspect of it, continuing to showcase those success stories and then investing in educating the workforce, right? Making them knowledgeable about the tools, understanding how they can use it in their day-to-day job and operations, how it aids and assists, not replaces, is a critical piece.
So I want to get into some of the questions from our audience, and one came in from during that registration process, and it's what would be a good place for starting from zero. And at the same time, we also got one while we were discussing today, and it's how do manufacturers take the first step? For example, we are a small manufacturer struggling with basic ERP optimization. Is there an AI solution, or is an AI solution even realistic for us to pursue at this point? So I think those questions are similar, but there's a little more nuance to that second one, or a little more to unpack there from a small or medium-sized manufacturer. How do you start? How do you go from 0 to 1? Anyone want to take that start?
I'll jump on that first. I mean, and we've discussed it, I think, through a handful of the questions. It will start with a strategy, right? It will start first and foremost by identifying what the bottlenecks are that you want to solve for, understanding what the impact is going to be, identifying the data that you have available, digging into what the expected ROI is, so you can take it back to leadership and get whatever funding's required. And then it's a lot of the things that we discussed as far as what's the success criteria going to look like? What are the metrics that you're going to manage this against when it's in the production? Change management, how we're going to operationalize these insights when it is in the production. So it starts with the strategy, at least where I've seen it be successful.
Anyone else, other thoughts on that? How do you get moving?
Well, go ahead.
I would go with what David said, like start with a small experimentation project, tag it to a bottom line strategy, and see how it goes. That will help them get the buy-in, and once the buy-in is there, the budget becomes bigger, bigger experimentation, higher risk, and the adoption journey starts.
Okay.
Our approach in this particular market, specifically the mid-market and the SMB market, where companies are keen to imbibe, leverage the AI/ML, for their particular business use cases, has been to provide a turnkey approach to the customers. So in some ways, that might benefit companies who are digitally not, let's say, not very mature on the AI side and would like to quickly scale up, is to find a turnkey approach or turnkey vendor who can basically help them deliver that. Certainly, they can do a small proof of concept, create business hypotheses around what benefits they would like to derive. But considering the cost of scaling, considering the cost of human resources required to scale up AI initiatives, most manufacturers might benefit from more of a turnkey approach. But that's been our experience in the market.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback off of that, Jeff, as well, and add into it for the SMMs. I would say a key kind of resource that if you're looking to get started as well is a lot of the manufacturing institutes. Like these are government-funded, institutes like MXD, SESME, et cetera, where, like Chirag was saying, if you're looking for like a starter kit or kind of where to start an innovation or different, platforms that you can leverage, those manufacturing institutes have those, and they're designed specifically to help small, medium manufacturers.
What challenges are you seeing to why people aren't adopting AI and why people don't think it's a fit? Are there any other challenges that we haven't covered that you're seeing? Is there anything I didn't ask about that you're like, oh, we encounter this a lot in our manufacturer industry clients, whatnot?
What we are seeing with our clients is that most of the AI projects with manufacturing clients is first of its kind. So there isn't something that's existing that they can take a look at it. Like seeing that it's a different feel, and for the stakeholders, especially for the C-suite. So that's because I work in the banking industry too, where it is easier to show what automation can do for certain use case. Here, everything is first of its kind. So they have to come with a pioneer mindset, and that mindset is also one of the challenge that we are seeing.
Okay. Well, we are about out of time. And so I want to thank all of our panelists for your insights today. Roscoe said something earlier in our discussion. He talked about a shiny object. And, early in my career, someone who was sort of senior to me told me that the big fish in the pond is the prudent fish that doesn't go after the shiny objects. But I think from what we're hearing today from you, what you're seeing in the industry, that this is a shiny object that we have to go after. Otherwise, there's going to be a lot of people who are passing you up. I think, Sanjeev, that you mentioned it being a competitive advantage to be implementing this. And so I think what you've said, the four of you have really made that clear that this is something that is important and vital to the future of manufacturing and where we're headed for 2030. So thank you for those insights. Before we go, I do want to make everybody aware that we'll be sending the full survey results that we've discussed today, the future of industrial AI in manufacturing, as well as access to additional resources from the Manufacturing in 2030 project, including the Crystal Ball series, and some more details that we'll be sending your way to all of our participants. The other thing that I want to make sure everyone is aware of is coming in December, we'll be back in Nashville for the Manufacturing in 2030 project event, where we'll be focusing on the coming data value revolution. And we touched on data and how it fits in with AI, but this event will be focused wholly on data. We'll be posting the details and agenda in the coming weeks, but we want to make sure that all of our audience, all of our folks block that off, because there's a good chance it'll sell out. So, you know, this is one of those things that everybody's really excited about is data. Everybody's always energized around this Manufacturing in 2030 project. So block your calendar, everyone, and we'll hope to see everybody in Nashville. To all of our participants, thank you for joining us, and thank you again to our panelists. If anybody has any questions or would like to contact any of our expert speakers, please email us at mlcinfo@nam.org. So we look forward to seeing you all at a future MLC event, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.